Okay. Well, hello. This is Tony Christ, uh, Sunshine and Transparency. Although we're recording it early, usually it will go out Sunday, unless you can see it, pull it up on YouTube. This is part two of Saving America. We're hoping to get some traction on this series. We're going to do four parts. Last week, to summarize it, we rewrote the United States tax code. We put the old code, uh, 6,871 pages, in the garbage can, threw it away, started with a blank sheet of paper. And among the things we did, we added significant deductions for children. For a mom and a dad married, Pete Buttigieg, you count, uh, giving significant deductions for children, and a bonus deduction for a marriage, for a married couple. We need to have kids. We need to have families. Those are the only deductions we have in our tax code. There are some anomalies to that, but I haven't gotten into them yet. Every other deduction out there goes in the garbage. No more deductions. But the deductions would be substantial. For example, if a mom and a dad had three kids, they'd be able to deduct $55,000 on a $60,000 salary. They would pay 10% on 5,000. They'd pay $500 in federal income tax a year. Now, that's not a bad deal. Now, you'd also, of course, have the 6.2% of Social Security expense. We also increase that amount on a prorated basis from 60,000 up to 400,000, so that at 400,000, the taxable rate with no deductions is 18%. That also goes up a little bit more when it gets to a million. It's 21% after a million. It doesn't go up more. We added an additional 5% to tax of gross income for Social Security, to try to infuse more dollars into a very bankrupt program that no one is addressing. We also have a after that, we have all income being treated the same, whether it's earned or income or unearned. We're not penalizing earners that earn their income and then treating unearned income differently. I don't care if it's cap gains. I don't care if it's long or short. It's going to fall in that schedule, somewhere between 10% for 60,000 and below, and of course down to the single deduction, and then upward of up to 400,000, it will be at 18%. After 400,000, it goes up to 21%. Now you're adding your 5% to anything over 175,000, so to supplement Social Security. So we made a number of changes. We also talked about ad valorem taxes. Those are taxes of goods and services. Sales taxes today would be considered an ad valorem tax. 45 states have sales taxes. We want to use that infrastructure. So in using their infrastructure, we're going to give the states a little bit of the money we collect. Only fair. So we're gonna call it a harmonized ad valorem, which means that we're working in conjunction with the state. So if the federal government were to tax all goods and services by 10%, that's right, Mr. Lawyer, you have to put 10% for the government on your bill. 2% of that would go to the states, 8% would go to the federal government. Ad valorem means also it's taxed at every level of production. The guy that cuts down the tree and sells it to the processing firm for $1 pays a 10% tax. The processing firm that buys it from that salesman pays a 10% tax, $1.10. When they resell it for $2, to say a paper company, the paper company would pay 220, 10 cents of which would go back to the first processor. And then when they sold it in final goods, say for $4 to Staples for paper, Staples would pay a 10%, that's 440, 20 cents of which would be returned to the middle guy again. So that at every stage, there's an economic reason for the tax to be paid. It doesn't require much regulation. Almost everyone in Europe is doing it, and they're doing it in the 20 percentile range. The tax would appear on the bill. So these are the types of things we're doing to make more money. There are very many details around them, foundational trusts, large corporations trading overseas. We touched on those things too. But we're going to move along now. We're going to talk about why there's an eminent problem that requires our attention, and why in our Saving America series, we're talking about structural changes in the way Americans do everything. The tax code, as I said, we threw the whole thing out. We're not amending, we're not adding another 10 pages to 8,671 pages. We're throwing the whole tax code away and starting with a blank sheet of paper. And our object is to write it in 10 pages. And we're respecting the military saying, keep it simple, stupid, KISS. And we're respecting what economists know too. Lower the rate and broaden the base. Lower the rate and broaden the base. I don't care if they're liberal or conservative economists. There's a general agreement that that will get you the most money. The object, you have to remember, is to get the government the most money, not to try to penalize the rich with 35, 40, or 50% tax. Aha, you're a rich guy. Get them, make them pay more. It doesn't work out in the government's best interest. So we're broadening the base, lowering the rate, BBLR and KISS, KISS. That's our objective with the tax code. Keep it simple, please. Keep it simple, stupid. What am I saying, please? And the other thing you must remember is that today in avoidance fees, there are $800 billion being, almost $1 trillion being paid a year. We're going to dig into that money because we're going to have a simple tax code. It's not going to require sophisticated attorneys to map out a plan for avoidance. It's going to be simple. And I'm sorry, Mr. Attorney, we're going to be cutting you out of a lot of income. Let that income go to a more productive use than paying for avoidance fees. Everything, all deductions and all gifts or payments by government are going to be omitted until we get to the entitlements. And the entitlements we're going to spend some time on. Now, why are we doing that? On to part two of the tax code. Why are we so concerned about making structural changes? Well, quite simply, because the government is going broke. It's sort of a secret. Neither political candidate talks about it. As a matter of fact, they're all full of gifts and giveaways. My God, you'd think the nation wasn't having a problem. Recently, I'll say the 10% bond crept up to 4% again. And that's a telling tale for two reasons. Mr. Hip at the Wall Street Journal says not only does he not think inflation has been quelled, he says also the huge amount of debt might surprise people when rates continue to move up. And why would a rate continue to move up? Well, because the ability to pay the debt back becomes more and more in question when we keep borrowing money and building up what we owe. And as it does, the risk increases. So there's a risk premium, and that's a higher interest rate. So people just aren't willing to lend anymore at 4 or 5%. They may want 6 or 7 or 10, if they view the risk high enough. And that would suffocate a lot of things going on, particularly in the stock market, were it to occur. So we're in debt, and no politician is talking about it. When you're in a hole, quit digging, for God's sakes. I mean, to the degree they do talk about it, they give it lip service. They say we're going to stimulate the economy and collect more money, or we're gonna give raise taxes and collect. But the point is, they keep digging deeper while they're talking it, and we go deeper and deeper and deeper. And when you have the history is when you have a currency collapse, it doesn't occur in incremental steps. It just crashes. We don't want that to happen. We still have options. We have to exercise them. They involve structural changes in America. We structurally changed the tax code. We're going to talk a little bit before we close this session about Medicaid and SNAPs. We did last week talk a little bit about Social Securities, increasing a 5% tax for Social Securities. We also suggested bumping the age to start to 68. Those aren't the final solution for Social Security, but they are a Band-Aid for right now, and we'll have a little bit more time to work on them. They're buying us time, is what it is. But we have to do something. We have to address it. And if people are confident that our dollar is not going to collapse into a debt trap, they're going to be more likely to keep trading in dollars and keep our currency as reserve currency. I tell people every day that it's not the Russians trying to kill the dollar. It's not the Chinese. They're all trying to do it. It's not the North Koreans. It's not Iran. I said, who is the worst enemy to our currency and the future of our country? Basically, it's us. We are. We're undoing it ourselves. And that's why we're talking about structural changes here today. And we're hoping one day the politicians get on the same page before it's too late. So, so the problem is really multifaceted, and it's another guy, Jeffrey Tucker, founder of Brownstone Institute, talked about that the government, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is not estimating the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, properly when they're talking about it being down to 3 or 2.9. And he cited a number of things: groceries, rents, housing, cars, insurance, and materials. He thought were all understated. He suggested actual inflation rates may be as high as 34 to 60% over the last 4 years, and not the 20 to 22% that these indexes, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, are using. And actually, look at house prices. I mean, a home price in 2021 has gone up over 40%, and it's 2024. Well, we don't count house prices in the CPI. Surprise? Not at all. Well, so there's a number of people. We already cited Greg Ip at the Wall Street Journal and his double concern about interest rates. And boy, would that bring the party to an end. Well, we're going to spend the rest of this session talking about Medicare, Medicaid, and the SNAPS program. The SNAPS program is a food program. I can tell you right now, SNAPS in 2018 was 64 billion expense, and in 2023 it's 113 billion, 500 million expense, with a 5.5 million administrative cost. 113 billion. And CBO estimates there's 14 to 15 billion of fraud. CBO. Now, outside agencies are estimating above 20% fraud. Now, when you go over to Medicaid, Medicaid provides medical care in theory for older people, lower incomes that can't afford it. Medicaid is going crazy. 21 to 22, it went up 9.6% to 805 billion. 22 to 23, it went up to 889 billion, up 11% in 1 year. It's going crazy. Now, this one, we're not this week. We haven't completed our formulation of what we're going to do about it. But I can tell you this, The states aren't paying a proportional amount, and the states oftentimes are submitting a lot of claims because the federal government pays disproportionately. For half of the plan, 5% of the population are very elderly, are consuming near half the plan, and they're not paying, but the states are paying 15% of the cost. So there's an inherent tendency to approve it, thinking the government's paying 85%, we're only paying 15. So that's a flaw in the structure of Medicaid, in my opinion. Now, the other flaw for both programs, you can enlist in both programs online, or you can go to a SNAP center or a Medicaid center and enlist. The thing is, they rely on you to provide proof of citizenship. They rely on you to provide pay stubs. Now, what if you forget to give them a pay stub or two to qualify? It's too easy. Today with technology, and CBO also estimates Medicaid, which is an expense of 889 billion, 33.5 billion is administrative fees, is also experiencing 100 billion in fraud. So you add the two together, you get 114 billion in fraud, near a trillion in expenses. And that's not the worst of it. The worst of it is private groups are estimating that the fraud is as high as 20%. That would almost be another, almost double what it is now. So the fraud is rampant. Again, when you look at how people can obtain it, they rely on individuals filling out forms. They may require an interview. There are penalties for cheating, but they're not monitored. And today, with the electronic sophistication we have, there's no reason why they can't know with a higher degree of certainty who's eligible and who isn't. So that needs to be adjustments made up and down these systems. The other thing that although I haven't put it in the proposal yet, is we need to give more deductibility for moms and dads with children to keep their parents in the house. That's the way it used to be before we got to crazy Johnson's nuclear family and we ship them off to death centers. We used to keep them in the house. They used to be great babysitters and provide for them in the house. Well, rather than give incentives like welfare did to get rid of the family and get rid of that man so he's not needed in the morning, every time I have a baby, I get paid another check. We're going to go do the opposite. We should reward with deductions families that keep their elders in the house until they pass from us. Save the government a ton of money, and it would allow families to save in tax expense in addition. So that's one idea. The other thing, we have to involve the states. They have to have more skin in the game, so to speak. They are making the final decision on admissions to SNAPs as well as Medicaid, and they don't have any skin in the game in Medicaid and in SNAPs, and they have very little skin in the game in Medicaid. So we have to figure a system that has them putting more skin in the game, making them more at risk for fraud. And so basically, these two areas need huge work. We also should use our tax-free worship institutes, synagogues, mosques, churches to help with the SNAPS program in particular. And we haven't really written that in yet, but certainly they are getting huge tax breaks, and certainly they're caring for human beings, maybe diverting some of the food to them. Another huge violation of the SNAPS program is they just take the SNAPS credits and trade them for liquor or drugs. And the program federally is botched, 100% botched, and we need the money. And we need to start out with some of these new directions recouping the 113 billion, which is an understatement. CBO never gets anything right. And if they're talking about fraud in the entities they work for, they're going to understate it, as other agencies have shown, all stating the fraud to be at a higher level. So basically, we want the states to have more skin in the game and the federal government to have less skin in the game. Federal government needs to cut back its borrowing. Uh, so I would expect you transition the program to the states. You still have the federal government putting up money, but I think the first year we transition, it should be minus the fraud money, and there should be penalties on the state for allowing fraudulent revenues to go out. The state has to have huge disincentives to regulate and monitor who's getting these funds. So right away, you're talking of saving of the fraud money, 112 billion a year. So write that down on the save money list. And now the other thing I want to say uh, about snaps is you could even you've got the public school system. The question is, are they qualified? And there's a basic income of one person of about 2,500, going up to 8 people at about 8,500 a month to qualify for snaps, and that has to be looked at very carefully. As I said, people will come in and apply for the snaps program. They may bring a W-2 with them, but they may have forgotten two or three other W-2s, and they get approved. I've known wealthy people that have received snaps, and it just shouldn't happen. So turning it over to the states, and the states are regulating now. It's just they're doing it mostly with with the Fed's money, our money. They're not doing it with their own money, and we want to get them more involved, more in the game. So after maybe a transition, starting out with the recoupment of the CBO fraud money in the first year, and over 3 or 4 years, we want to transition the federal government down to below 50% of the expense, and that would be a huge saving. And much of it's made up with fraud. Anytime you can incentivize people to do things and provide, you're better off than what did the Bible say? Rather than giving them a fish, teach them how to fish. So that should be the direction for both Medicaid and Medicare, and as well as SNAPs. So basically, it's starting to come together. I mean, we found savings, interest deductibility, $100 billion a year by omitting that deduction. Snaps by omitting the fraud is over 200 billion a year. We feel the simplicity of the tax form we're putting forward, which completely throws out the 6,871 page tax document presently, and cuts back on primarily lawyers, some accountants, primarily lawyers' avoidance fees. Uh, we feel hundreds of billions will be saved. Keep it simple, stupid. So we're getting there. We've got more to talk about. We've got 2 more sessions coming up, and we're going to get into some of these issues deeper. We may have a special guest come in next week. That's a possibility. So please stay tuned. Uh, we hope at the end of this to have a document that we can present at least to our viewers and readers of how the structural changes, what they look like, what they are, and God help us if we don't take it seriously and do it nationally and elect some politicians that address it. We're in a precarious place, and the sad thing is our political class isn't even looking in that direction, and they're doing the biggest injustice I can think of for the citizenry of the country. They're promising them gifts when the country's practically broke. So you have a blessed week. We'll see you next week with our part 3, Saving America. And we hope you'll tune in and watch it to the culmination. And thank you. See you then. Bye.